guys, welcome back to another episode of the CDP Growth Show. On today's episode, I'm joined by Jay, who is the current head of growth at Fluence. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Awesome. Now, Jay, before we kind of dive straight into kind of the main episode, just give my audience like a really quick just 30-second rundown of kind of what Fluence is, and then really who you guys serve with the platform.
Yeah, for sure. So Fluence is an artificial intelligence company. We specialize in natural language processing. So our artificial intelligence has the ability to read and interpret any written language documentation.
Yeah.
Lots of use cases for that. Where we specialize is that we help senior decision makers arrive at better decisions and make those decisions faster.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And what markets are you kind of typically serving with this?
So one of the cool things, and I guess one of the challenges with artificial intelligence, is it's quite ubiquitous. So we can work in a lot of markets. Right now, we're just testing different market strategies. Our goal is to be like active in 3 at any one stage while we scale up.
Yeah. Okay. And what are them kind of current 3 markets that you guys are in?
Right now, we're testing. We're working like with government organizations. Regulatory organizations, anything that has oversight, because that means you have lots of risk and compliance, which is heavy documentation. And then we're looking at also like education and assessment, because that's a very human time intensive market as well. So the transformational element of technology can help there as well.
Awesome. Makes sense. And, I'd be really interested to know how you, just again, to give the audience kind of context, how did you kind of get into the world of, kind of B2B software kind of, and just the whole kind of SaaS world, right? Have you always been in software and SaaS, or have you kind of made that transition?
I've made that transition. Sorry, I'm just plugging turning the charger on at the wall. There we go. Don't want the Mac to die mid-sentence. So I got into it. I guess I was running my own company. I've worked in technology pretty much my whole career, but back in sort of 2016, I was running a consultancy company that specialized in EdTech, helping schools, colleges, universities adopt technology. Because this was at the time when like mobile devices had just arrived and it was booming. And then through lots of that work, I met loads of really interesting EdTech companies around London. It was it was the real start of like the EdTech growth in the UK. And sort of a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to join Arbor Education. They were sort of fast growth EdTech, specialized in big data, taking on like a really dominant market leader. So it had all like the combination of things I love, like big data, deep tech, sort of David versus Goliath, and sort of like transformational technology. So I jumped across and then sort of never looked back really.
Got it. Okay. And so when did you kind of initially join Fluence? Has this been recently or?
Yeah. So I did about 2 years at Arbor. I was growth manager there through their scaling operations. So our team went from sort of 40 to about 100 in sort of 20 months. It's not like huge growth in like in general growth and like consumer growth, but in EdTech, that's like incredibly quick. But a lot of my job was on the road. So I had a team in Leeds. The head office was in London, and our development team was in Belgrade in Serbia. And then I was also working with sort of overviewing like 300 customers around the UK, everywhere from like Cornwall through to Newcastle. So it was a lot of time on the road. It was super fun. But then after about 2 years of doing that, I sort of wanted to slow down a bit. I live in Birmingham in the Midlands. So it made sense to sort of concentrate. I did about a year of sort of full-time consultancy and sort of short-term turnaround projects or support for companies trying to break into the UK market. And then just through serendipity, really, like I was just chatting to people, going for coffees in Birmingham, and I met Jennifer, who's a co-founder at Fluence, and then sort of the rest is history. So I've been there since January in the full-time role.
Okay, makes sense. And I know you guys in relative, I know kind of prior to this conversation, you had talked about you guys are still quite early in terms of, that kind of product market fit kind of stage. And I think I'd be really interested now, especially for the audience, we've got quite an early stage, kind of early to mid stage kind of listening, people that listen to the show. So I think it'd be really interesting to hear how you're kind of still in that process of going about finding product market fit and how you're kind of getting tractions on kind of certain key channels.
Yeah, for sure. So the really interesting thing about AI, and the reason I wanted to get into it is it's such a transformational technology.
Yeah.
Potentially it could transform the world, every business, how we live as societies.
Yeah.
But actually, how do you win your first 10 customers? Like, who are the first 10 organizations that you really focus on and double down? Because if you're trying to be everything to everyone, then you just don't get any traction.
Yeah.
So I sort of have like a triangulation method. I look at like a lot of industry reports, KPMG, Gartner, Accenture do loads and loads of deep analysis on like technology trends, operational trends in businesses. I find that's a really good starting point when you're looking at the whole market to see, okay, where's the money being spent? Who's open to this? Like, where are you going to get conversations and early traction? They may not turn into sales, but you can get use cases and you can have, really good conversations, get momentum. We cross-reference that with like a lot of our sales activity. So we have a more direct sales approach. We don't need to win hundreds of customers. At the stage we're at, we're just looking for like 10 really high quality clients we can build case studies around. And that will give us the ability to raise our Series A round and then really go after the market. And then the third triangulation is the use cases we are working on and the customers we've got. We look at what the impact is and what the potential market size is. So there's lots of things that AI can do, and it generally is beneficial in most use cases, but it's whether people would pay for that. Like, is the problem you're solving, is it big enough that people would put money behind it?
Yeah, makes sense. I think, again, I'd be interested to know, obviously, since you've kind of started to get this kind of product market fit with these kind of early adopters, how you've actually brought on these first few accounts and customers, and how you've because again, something that I think for a lot of the early stage founders is, okay, how do we actually get, once we know they have this problem, how do we actually get in front of them and get in front of the decision makers?
So the way we've done it is sort of a combination. So we've done like a lot of direct outreach. So I think people go down rabbit holes of like making it really complex and doing big strategies and projects. We've literally got LinkedIn Premium, and we just pick a market based on, insurance tech, regulation tech, healthcare, big markets that are exploring and driving AI adoption in the UK. So we say, okay, we have an agreement internally. These are 3 sensible markets to start looking at. Okay, now let's come up with 50 prospective organizations we could try and sell into. We have like buying criteria. So those organizations need to be like sufficient size, have a sufficient turnover. So we're quite clear on our buyer personas. And then from that, we then start mapping out, okay, what does the executive team look like in like a regulatory environment? So, if you're working with like the Highways Agency or the Financial Conduct Authority, like who's that top tier? Everyone has a CEO, CFO, COO, but actually there's a lot of specific job roles. And you often find directors of strategy, directors of transformation, chief technical officers. In what's quite interesting is in a tech environment, chief technical officer is very much involved in building the tech, but in a sort of public sector corporate environment, they tend to be more involved in the strategy and moving the organization forward and making the sort of more of an operations role. And then when we sort of like fleshed out the buying personas, like who we want to try and reach out to, we just literally spend days and weeks on LinkedIn, sort of building up a loose database. Senior stakeholders are super easy to find on LinkedIn, and with the sales professional package, it makes it super simple. It'll even once you sort of loaded up like what your buying persona is, it'll just keep recommending people you should reach out to. And then it's just about testing messaging. So we do a lot of direct outreach
via LinkedIn.
So LinkedIn messages, email marketing. Just once you start following those people, you start to see what events they go to. So we do we'll turn up at a lot of events before lockdown, obviously. Makes it a bit more challenging. And then we all that stuff is actually free and within our control. So we can do a lot of that without spending any money, which gives us a better runway. And then where we do spend money, we look at like high quality industry trade shows. So ones with like smaller gatherings. There's a lot where we could go and be, we could get a stand and there'll be 1,000 delegates there.
Yeah.
But for the stage we're at, again, if we had 100 customers come on board, it would actually be a bit of a challenge for us. We just want 10 really high quality customers.
Taking phases. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. I think it's such a good point that you made there about just, people liked, especially early stage founders, they like to overcomplicate things when it comes to the marketing and kind of sales process. They want to, have some magic Facebook ad campaign working, or have some, all of these different things working, when actually, if you just keep it simple, LinkedIn, you've got access to pretty much everyone that you need to be in front of. So I think it's so important in those early days, you just keep it super, super simple.
Yeah, it's about the hustle. It's a big term in America, and it sort of gets like trodden a little bit here, like the British sensibilities. But it is about, how can you get a conversation with someone, like, and either directly, or do you have contacts you can reach out through? Just beg, borrow, and steal, essentially, to get those early conversations going.
Yeah. So it really like for you guys right now, are you doing much like content marketing, or is it just purely outbound?
So we've changed, actually. Our response to COVID has been to like transition to content marketing quicker. Just because it's put the absolute brakes on, like sort of any sales meetings. Obviously people can't travel or meet in person. We're still doing some over Zoom, but a lot of larger organizations have furloughed a lot of workers. So they've sort of just frozen all priorities and strategies at the moment. So the opportunity for us is to build up like really good assets, to raise our brand equity in the market, and to
inbound assets,
sort of step out. Because one of the things about AI is that you work in stealth mode for a long time. So Fluence has been around since 2016, developing that technology, and so now we're using this time to really like schedule like lots of high quality blogs, social media posts, build networks, and
And are you guys, are you in like a fairly competitive space, or is it been pretty easy for you guys to stand out on the kind of inbound brand side?
It's a challenge actually in AI, because a lot of AI companies work in stealth mode for years, and then sort of out of nowhere they'll just pop up and
release, or
and you usually find out about them because they've just raised, a massive Series A round, and they've taken on 40 people. And you'll find that actually they've already got like 2 partnerships in a government organization. So, that's one of like the nuances of the AI market versus like traditional consumer or SaaS, where it is more of like a different choice. The other interesting nuance is that AI is not off the shelf. So there's a pilot sort of transitionary phase where often it's sort of a closed 3 to 6 months trial pilot to see if actually it does work in that organization.
Makes sense.
So I think what we're looking at the moment is just to raise awareness that we do exist, and then get some inbound leads coming, and then once lockdown sort of eases and we can travel and stuff again, then hopefully we'll be spoiled for choice about meetings.
Makes sense. Are you obviously, I'm assuming that this has been quite recently with the inbound assets that you've been building, but have you started to see any kind of traction with that yet, or is it just really now about just building them first?
So tracking, getting some good comments and likes on social media, getting into the hands of some interesting people. So one of our focuses to get into the finance market, and test that. They're big adopters of AI, so we've got some really nice comments and interest from some venture capitalists, some people at sort of big banks. If we hadn't written those blogs, then that even small interaction wouldn't have happened. And the other element that we've done is that the other use of our technology is we're trialing launching a consumer platform which does competitor analysis, like automated pulls on big data sets. And again, that's been really positive. We put a survey out to sort of understand the problem, and we've had about 30-40 responses within the last few days. So competitor analysis seems to be quite a big challenge that young startups face as well. So it's quite good.
And I think, again, going back to what you said there, of even if you do just get one person that fits your ideal kind of target, that does comment or does interact or shows some form of interest, that's really all that matters. I think there's, again, too many companies that are trying to write the viral blog. They're trying to, release a a webinar that gets X amount of signups, when actually in reality, if you just get one of your targets to target customers to show some form of interest, that's really all that matters with inbound. I think people need to reframe that quite a lot.
Yeah,
and
for
how
sure.
they approach the inbound side. Awesome. Yeah. So I'd be, again, really interested to hear, perhaps how you've maybe adapted the stack, moving more into the kind of now how you've structured your kind of growth stack. Maybe again, just given the whole kind of inbound and you guys now starting to kind of to use inbound more. I mean, just really, how have you developed the growth stack, since you've joined, and have you kind of put more of an emphasis now on using more kind of inbound MarTech tools?
Yeah, so we've kept it really simple, actually. So we use Pipedrive for our CRM.
Yeah.
And sales funnel. We did have HubSpot in place originally, so we're using those side by side. I do love HubSpot, but I think we're a stage too early for it. Yeah, has a lot. It's really good for like segmentation, stuff like that. But our goal is to sign up 10 clients this year, so we don't really need to cut our segmentation here, there, and everywhere at this point. So we're building it out in Pipedrive. I really love Pipedrive because I think the sales funnel and the conversion metrics in it are just probably the best in any tool I've seen at that price. The key driver for us is actually conversion. So like, because one of the challenges, like lots of people are really interested in AI. So it's not that difficult to get conversations and early stage conversations. We have to be quite hot on qualifying whether this could turn into a project. So Pipedrive is really strong for that and helps us see where we are and manage our sales week to week. And then for social media, we post through LinkedIn and Twitter. We don't do Facebook because our market's not there. We have an Instagram, but that's for like company culture. Again, our target buyers are not there. So we just use Hootsuite, just a premium feature. Have a basic social media plan of sort of get a post out a day, and then just do lots of engagement with my account, Jen and Dave, who are the co-founders of the company. They engage around it. So there's that personal aspect as well. It's not just a company posting out loads and loads of stuff. There's people behind the messaging. And then for all our dashboards and all our tracking, we just use Google Sheets.
Keep it simple.
And with some charts. So probably one of the more basic steps I imagine you get on the show.
No, I think we do get people exactly like yourself where it doesn't need to be overkill. It doesn't need, and I think again, you get a lot of startup founders now who they want to put 25 different marketing softwares in place before they even sign up the first customer, right? Because they've raised, so I think it's such an important point there of just, you only need to upgrade and level up once you reach a certain level. And I think it just, like you said, it has to be in stages. You shouldn't just jump the gun and choose HubSpot from day one. Because of the type of software it is. So really key point there. And again, from you, I'm assuming that you've probably seen lots of different startups, kind of over working in this industry. And I'd be really interested to hear just your kind of just general advice, to, let's say we've got a new startup founder, he's in a similar space to you guys, right? And, what advice would you give to this kind of new B2B, SaaS startup in terms of structuring that kind of MarTech stack and just how they should kind of go about, kind of building out that stack?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen in startups I work with or like advised is that often, I think it's the same when I ran my own business. I did the same thing where you come up with a good idea, you create a product or service, and then you're like, right, I'm going to sell it to the market. And then you're just sort of pushing things onto the market and you don't have that feedback loop. I think what's changed over the years for me is that I have a much stronger understanding about sort of market research, how to look for signals, how to have like more of a pull. So if you can identify trends in the market or gaps, and your product or service can come and fit those gaps, it becomes much easier to scale and grow and to gain traction. I think before building any like marketing stack or systems and processes and tools, the thing you need to be clear on is like, who is your target buyer? So like, what's the demographics? It's sort of buying persona exercise, and there's lots of tools that do that online. And it's very easy to do it, but I think a lot of founders or startup owners, they haven't actually gone out and talked to people. So they have an idea of who they think their target buyer is, but it's not actually validated. Have they talked to 20, 30, 40 people? in this market they're trying to sell into, or with this problem they're trying to solve? Do they know the competition? Do they know how people solve this problem at this current stage?
Yeah.
And I think once you understanding that is key, and there's no technology that really does that. It's like old-fashioned conversations, phone calls, like Zoom calls. But once you're clear on that, I think building your marketing stack it becomes much easier, because you have a really clear direction about where you're going. So all the different technologies, which are really fun, they can get in the way if you don't know the direction you're going in, and you just get sort of sucked into like minutiae and creating too many segments and all these automations, and actually who are the first 100 people you want to reach and sell to.
It's always really evident when you've got a startup where they've just scaled far too quickly, you know, in a market where perhaps the market wasn't quite ready for this type of product yet, or they just simply didn't want this product, and it feels very forced, and it feels it shouldn't be there. And I think that it's always, like I said, always very evident when you've got a startup that's done that, and they've, like you said, scaled too quickly. So I think what you're doing with you guys is, you know, taking it in stages. It's the way it should be, and taking it gradually. Really key point. And I guess, you know, once you obviously, because you've obviously worked, you know, going back to your other company, was it an EdTech, the previous company that you worked with? Obviously you kind of saw the growth of that, and you know, once you get to a certain stage, you know, platforms, you know, like kind of CDP platforms, and we're seeing quite a rampant rise now of platforms like Segment, right, that are becoming quite useful for, you know, kind of B2B SaaS companies really across the board. So I'd be really interested to hear kind of just your general perspective, because obviously I know you guys are still in that early phase right now, so it wouldn't be quite a relevant tool, but just your overall perspective on when a company should consider a tool like that, and just how you think it plays into the whole kind of ecosystem.
I think it depends on the market for me. So what those tools give you is it's essentially about data. It's about who is your target buyer and how do I reach them, and how do I get my message out repeatedly. In EdTech and so one of the interesting things, like lots of public sector markets, is that data sets are freely available if you know how to get them. In SaaS markets, enterprise markets, again, a lot of that data, if you know how to find it, you can get it. So it's sort of the balance is, like, segmentation tools are really great if you're capturing loads and loads of data. So if you've got a really strong like content marketing outreach, and you're getting probably hundreds or so of emails a week from your capture forms and stuff like that, or the ways, then obviously you reach a stage where you do need to segment that a lot. Otherwise, you know, who you're trying to sell to, and how do you tailor the messages specifically to provide value. I think I'm not so big of a fan of working in businesses when they reach that scale. So I really like the early stage where it's a bit more scrappy. It's a bit, you're sort of creating it on the fly as you go. Like, I guess it's just the balance of like the creativity art side and the balance of science in marketing, and the segmentation side suits like the science, like very data driven personality really well. And I know from experience, like, that's not really my bag.
Of course. I think it again. It is all. It's a very. I think it's very dependent on the size of the company, and just like you said there, you know, the type of person that you are. Are you more of a kind of data analytical driven marketer, or, you know, the opposite? So I think really key point.
So I think I guess to sort of answer the question, give some people help on like when they should segment. I think for me, I start looking at segmentation software at the point where I've sort of exhausted like in-person events and like existing networks. When you look at like lots of the success stories about all the big names, they get their initial traction by getting into events and network groups, you know, wherever that may be. Whatever you're trying to sell, there will be like interest groups around it, and those interest groups will meet in person. If you can get to those groups in person, I've always found that's the quickest way to gain traction. Because most companies do try and reach you digitally. So you're fighting in a very like noisy field, whereas if you can actually turn up and have a human conversation, then it gives you the opportunity to either get the product or service in their hands, but better yet, it can give you some real-time feedback on actually how close are you to really nailing this problem that they've got? And then that will just strengthen like your value proposition and your like all the other good things that come with that.
Yeah. So once you've really kind of exhausted that like in-person input, whether it's trade shows, networks, wherever it is, once you've exhausted that and you've kind of got through the manual phases, then that's when you consider a tool like Segment or makes sense. Again, it always comes back to this thing of don't scale too quickly, and I think you really have to take it in phases as a startup company and realize that you're not going to be able to automate from day one. It has to be, you've got to get through that quite manual phase no matter what company you're in. So really, really key point. And again, to kind of wrap things up, and there's never one answer to this. There's never it's a very tough question because it's there's simply not one answer. But if again, from your perspective, if there's one metric as a marketer that you just really should be tracking that is just vital for the kind of health of the business, if you like, what would be that one metric for you? And obviously more looking at SaaS.
So mine's conversion. So conversion through the funnel. So your funnel can have as many stages as you want or as few as you want, depends on the company and the market. But ultimately for me, you've got to get clients in, you've got to get money in the bank. And if you're not doing those two things, the company will eventually like go bust. So you need to be clear that you're converting through the funnel. So I think it's a lot of like digital marketing it's very exciting when they look at like engagement and likes and retweets and all that good stuff. But you could have 1,000 likes, retweets, engagement, but you're not converting anyone to the paid service. Actually that the strategy you've employed is not working. There's something's not right and it's not following through like the whole company structure. And I think one of the challenges is that a lot of marketing in startups gets like really functionalized. Like over at the start, it's just like, well, you guys generate leads and then it's passed on to sales and they sell it. So I think marketing as a whole, the more it's in the sort of strategic executive team and has like an overview of like the whole business operation, the better it can
single
support.
department.
Because if you just targeted on leads, then the classic argument of like, you've got marketing qualified leads versus sales qualified leads, and the marketer will say, well, I've given you 1,000, they're really good, and the sales guy will say, well, they're just no good, and you're just bickering between yourselves when you could be working together. And I've been in that position as a sales guy, like in my early career.
I think there's the more, and we're starting to see it now with things like ABM and these kind of terms becoming very popular. But I mean, they've always really been there. I think it's just now companies are really, for some reason, starting to have that alignment. Perhaps because of tech now that is starting to come to the market. And I think the more, like you said, the more marketing can have that. Both marketing and sales can have that full company alignment. They can see the entire process. I think the better. Whenever it's just marketing on their own, driving leads and ebook signups, it's never a good idea. I think you've got to have that full funnel kind of vision, if you like.
And I think like content marketing is becoming quite mature now. So most companies do have a thought leadership blog. Most people are putting out ebook, like some sort of digital download. So those tricks 5 years ago would have like really helped you step out. But now it's sort of half of the course that you have to do it. Conversion for me is key.
Makes sense. It's like a lot of people now who are the whole kind of category creation, right? It seems like everyone now has got their own category, and it's just, I think these tricks that they may have worked 5 years ago, they don't work now, and it's you've really got to adapt strategies, and like you said, have that kind of, if you're a marketer, have that full funnel approach. Completely agree. Well, look, Jay, it's been really, really awesome having you on the show. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you've enjoyed coming on.
It's been great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And guys, I will see you on the next episode of the CDP Growth Show. See ya.